beneath a low hill in central China, lies a tomb that no one has dared to open for more than 2,000 years. It is not lost. We know exactly where it is. We can walk across its surface, measure its shape, and map the invisible poison believed to move in the soil beneath our feet. And still, to this day, no archaeologist alive will break its seal. Why? What could wait inside a chamber sealed since before the fall of Rome? Something powerful enough to stop the most populous nation on earth from lifting a single stone. Is it fear of ruining what lies within? Fear of what the ancient records promise is waiting in the dark? Or fear of something our instruments have detected, but our science cannot yet safely reach? Today we examine the records, the words of a historian who wrote more than 2,000 years ago, describing a tomb he had almost certainly never seen, the readings of modern machines that seem impossibly to confirm his claims, and the long silence of a government that has chosen again and again to leave the first emperor of China undisturbed. To understand the seal, we must first return to the man buried behind it. His name was Ying Zheng. He was born in 259 BC into a fractured land, a China torn between rival kingdoms that had bled one another for centuries in an age remembered as the Warring States. By the time he was 38, he had swallowed them whole. One by one, 6 great states fell to his armies. For the first time in history, the land was unified under a single ruler. He decided that the old title of king was too small for what he had become. So he invented a new one. He called himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. He standardized the script, the currency, the laws, even the width of the cart roads. He began a great wall along the northern frontier. He ruled as though the whole world had been shaped for him, and him alone. But there was one border the first emperor could not command: death. And here the story begins to turn strange. The man who had conquered an entire civilization became consumed in his final years by the single enemy no army could defeat. He would not accept his own end. He refused it entirely. And so he turned the full weight of his empire toward a single, impossible goal: to live forever. He sent great expeditions across the eastern seas, searching for mythical islands where an elixir of immortality was said to grow. His court alchemists labored over potions and powders. And in the medicine of his age, one substance above all was believed to hold the key to eternal life: a strange, shimmering, silver-white liquid metal that ran like water yet gleamed like the moon. Mercury. He drank it, in pills, in tinctures, in careful measured doses, believing that each one carried him a little closer to a life without end. We now know the terrible truth. Mercury does the exact opposite. It corrodes the nerves, poisons the blood, and slowly unravels the mind. The elixir meant to make the emperor into a living god was, invisibly and patiently, killing him from the inside. In 210 BC, while traveling through the eastern provinces of his empire, Qin Shi Huang died. He was 49 years old. Many historians believe the mercury he swallowed in pursuit of immortality was the very thing that killed him. His ministers, terrified of the chaos his death might unleash, hid the truth. They packed a cart with rotting fish to disguise the stench of the decaying emperor as they carried his body home. But the emperor had not been idle in life. For decades, in secret, he had been building, not a palace for the living, but an entire world for the dead. A tomb so vast, so elaborate and so strange that its full interior has never been seen by human eyes. Hold on to that thought. Everything you are about to hear about what lies inside, no living person has ever confirmed with their own sight. The work had begun when he was only 13 years old, newly crowned. After unification, it swelled into something monstrous. According to the ancient records, 700,000 laborers were driven to the foot of Mount Li, near the modern city of Xi'an. For nearly 4 decades, they dug, carved, and sealed. What they raised would become the largest tomb complex the world has ever known. Today, what remains above the ground looks almost gentle. A broad, rounded hill of earth, some 76 meters high, softened now by trees and wild grass. You could walk past it on a quiet afternoon and mistake it for a natural rise in the landscape. But beneath that peaceful mound lies a buried city, and at its very heart, a sealed chamber that has never once been opened. For more than 2,000 years, the world simply forgot what lay here. Then, in the spring of 1974, a small group of farmers digging a well near Xi'an struck something hard, buried in the dry earth. Fragments of fired clay, then a shoulder, then a head, a human face, staring back at them out of the darkness of the soil. They had broken, by accident, into the emperor's hidden world. What those farmers had stumbled upon would astonish the entire world. An army, thousands upon thousands of life-sized soldiers, molded from clay and buried in ordered ranks beneath the fields. Archaeologists would eventually uncover an estimated 7,000 figures: infantry, kneeling archers, charioteers, and horses, each one standing in silent formation, facing east, guarding a master who had lain dead for more than 2,000 years. Look closely at them, and the strangeness only deepens. No two faces are alike. Different features, different expressions, different ages seem pressed into the clay. Some scholars believe each warrior was modeled on a real soldier of the Qin army, an entire generation of the living, captured in earth, so that the first emperor would never have to march into the next world without his men beside him. And there is something the photographs almost never show you. When these warriors were first lifted from the ground, they were not the muted grey we know today. They were painted, deep crimson, green, blue, and violet, vivid with colour. But the instant the ancient lacquer beneath the paint met the open air, it began to curl and flake away. Within seconds, the colour started to die. Some of the pigments faded within 15 seconds of exposure. Within minutes, whole layers of paint lifted from the clay and drifted away as dust. 2,000 years of colour, lost in the time it takes to draw a single breath. And within that loss lies a quiet, chilling warning that what has survived for millennia underground can be destroyed in an instant, the moment we reach out to touch it. But remember this, that vast buried army is not the tomb. The 7,000 warriors stand more than a kilometre away from the burial mound itself. They are only the outermost ring of guards, the far edge of a necropolis that sprawls for miles beneath the fields. The emperor himself lies elsewhere. Deeper, beneath the great hill, behind a seal that no modern hand has ever touched. So what actually lies inside that sealed hill? For an answer, we have only one true source, a single voice reaching to us across the centuries. His name was Sima Qian, the grand historian of the Han dynasty. Roughly 100 years after the emperor's death, he set down a description of the tomb's interior that reads far more like a myth than any sober historical record. He described a subterranean palace. The laborers, he wrote, dug down through 3 underground streams of water and sealed the depths with molten bronze. Within the great chamber, they built models of palaces, pavilions, and towers, and filled it with wondrous objects and treasures beyond counting. And across the ceiling above, he wrote, they set the heavens themselves, the stars, the constellations, the whole night sky rendered in the dark. And beneath those painted stars, he described the earth, the rivers and streams of the empire, the mighty Yangtze, the Yellow River, and the wide encircling sea, all recreated within the tomb. But not in water. They were formed, Sima Qian wrote, from flowing quicksilver, from liquid mercury, made to move and circulate by some hidden mechanism. A shimmering silver map of a whole empire running forever in the dark. For many centuries, this was dismissed as pure legend, a poetic flourish, an exaggeration written down long after the events it claimed to describe. Rivers of liquid metal flowing mechanically beneath a mountain of earth. It sounded like the invention of a storyteller, not the report of a careful historian. And there was no way on earth to test it. No one was going to dig up an emperor simply to check. Then, in the modern era, science arrived at Mount Li. Beginning in the 1980s, researchers carefully took soil samples across the surface of the Great Burial Mound, testing them for traces of mercury. What they found stopped them cold. The soil directly above the tomb held mercury concentrations dramatically higher than the surrounding land. In some places, many times higher than any natural source could possibly explain. But the most unsettling detail was not the sheer quantity of it. It was the pattern. When researchers mapped exactly where the mercury readings were strongest, the distribution seemed to echo something familiar. The concentrations were higher toward the north and the east, precisely where, on a map of ancient China, the Great Sea and the major rivers would lie. The silver rivers Sima Qian described may still be down there in the dark. Consider carefully what that implies. A historian, writing a full century after the emperor's death, described something no person of his own time could ever have verified with their eyes. And 2,000 years later, our modern instruments appear to agree with him. The mercury is real, which forces upon us a far more troubling question. If he was right about the rivers, what else in his account was true? Because Sima Qian described far more than rivers. He wrote that the tomb was defended. Craftsmen, he claimed, were ordered to build crossbows and triggered arrows, loaded and rigged to fire automatically at anyone who dared break into the chamber. Mechanical traps set in absolute darkness, primed more than 2,000 years ago, patiently waiting for an intruder who, so far, has never come. Whether they could still fire, no one knows. And there is a darker passage still in his account. When the emperor was finally laid to rest, he wrote, "The great middle gate and the outer gate were closed, sealing the craftsmen and laborers who had done the final work inside the tomb. The very men who had built the chamber, who knew its passages and its traps, were entombed alive within it, so that its secrets would die together with them." We must be careful here. This is the point where documented fact fades into something older and far less certain. The automatic crossbows, the workers sealed alive, the rivers of mercury set to flow by machine, all of it comes down to us from a single ancient text, unconfirmed by any excavation. It may be sober truth, it may be legend, and the only way to know for certain would be to open the tomb. And no one will open it. Not the archaeologists who have devoted their entire lives to Mount Li, not the government that stands guard over it. In more than 50 years since the Terracotta Army was first uncovered, the central tomb has remained sealed, deliberately, by deliberate choice. This is not neglect, and it is not incompetence. It is one of the most carefully considered refusals in the whole of modern archaeology. The first reason is written plainly in the flaking paint of the terracotta warriors. Remember the color that vanished in seconds the moment it met the air. That is the lesson the archaeologists can't allow themselves to forget. Inside the sealed tomb, there may lie silk, lacquer, wood, and painted surfaces. Fragile organic treasures preserved only because they have never touched oxygen. Open the chamber carelessly, and they could crumble before anyone could record them. China's own heritage authorities have said it plainly and repeatedly. The technology needed to excavate this tomb safely simply does not yet exist. To dig into it now would not be to discover it, but to destroy it. Far better, they argue, to wait years, decades, perhaps another full century, until science can finally enter without ruining what it finds. The emperor has waited 2,000 years. He can afford to wait a little longer. The second danger is the mercury itself. If Sima Qian's account is accurate, the chamber may still hold pools and channels of a lethal, slowly evaporating poison. Break the seal without extraordinary care, and toxic vapor could pour out into the passages, an invisible threat to every worker who steps inside. The very elixir the emperor drank to cheat death may now stand as his final guardian, still deadly, still waiting in the dark. And then there is the simple, staggering matter of scale. The full tomb complex covers an area so enormous that even after 5 decades of continuous work, archaeologists have excavated only a small fraction of it. The central burial mound alone dwarfs the great pits of the Terracotta Army many times over. To open and properly record the main chamber would be the work of generations, not merely a few digging seasons. There is also a matter of deep principle. Chinese heritage policy holds firmly that a sealed imperial tomb should never be disturbed without an overwhelming and unavoidable reason. Protection first, minimal intervention. Leave the dead in their peace unless the living are left with no other choice. And so the seal endures, not because it could not be broken open, but because those who guard it believe that it should not be. Instead, the researchers have learned to look without ever touching. Ground-penetrating radar, remote sensing, magnetic surveys, patient soil analysis. The tomb has been studied like a patient no surgeon is willing to cut open. These methods suggest the underground palace remains largely intact, its central chamber seemingly untouched by the tomb robbers who plundered so many other imperial graves across the centuries. Whatever lies within it may still be down there, waiting. And this brings us back to the warning hidden in that faded paint. We now understand what the archaeologists grasped the instant that color turned to dust, that some things survive only in the dark, and that to look upon them at last is to lose them forever. The tomb is not sealed because we cannot reach it. It is sealed because reaching it might destroy the very thing we most long to see. Picture it, as it may exist at this very moment. A vast chamber beneath the hill, utterly black and silent, a ceiling scattered with jeweled painted stars. Below them, an entire empire rendered in miniature, palaces and towers, and rivers of mercury creeping slowly across a landscape of bronze. And somewhere at the center of it all, the coffin of the man who ordered every stone of it, untouched since the day the doors were sealed. There is a terrible irony buried in all of this. Qin Shi Huang built this hidden world for a single purpose, to defeat death, to carry his power unbroken into eternity. And in a strange, unintended way, he has partly succeeded. 2,000 years on, an emperor whom no one can see still commands the caution of an entire nation. His tomb is guarded now not by clay soldiers, but by our own fear of disturbing it. So the question returns, exactly where we first left it. What waits inside? A river of poison, still slowly flowing, ancient traps still poised in the blackness, treasures beyond all imagination, or a chamber long ago collapsed into rubble and silence. We have the records, we have the strange readings from the soil, but between them and the truth stands a wall of earth that no one, so far, is willing to breach. Perhaps one day a future generation, armed with gentler tools than ours, will stand before that seal and finally look inside. Or perhaps the first emperor will have his final wish after all, and lie undisturbed forever, his silver rivers running quietly in a darkness that no living eye will ever meet. Until that day comes, the tomb keeps its secret. and we are left only to wonder what the Earth is still hiding.